I never imagined a poor popcorn girl could capture the heart of a millionaire CEO. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was thick with excitement, the scent of buttered popcorn danced around me, mingling with the warm glow of the setting sun. My trembling hands gripped the worn wooden cart, covered in vibrant yellow and red stripes. I was just Clara, 22 years old, trapped in an endless cycle of shifts and dreams, never daring to look up. My feet ached from standing for hours, but the clinking of coins was my heartbeat, it kept me going. I squeezed my eyes shut for a moment. The world was a blur, full of shadows and flickering lights. My friends, Jane and Sam, were nearby, their laughter carrying a warmth. They were my escape from this life of popcorn and poverty, reminding me that even in this circus of dreams, happiness lingered. The annual carnival was in full swing. It felt magical and chaotic. Far-off screams filled the air, joyful, shrill, and electrifying. I watched families bounce from one ride to another, eyes wide with glee. But my heart sank when I looked at them. Happiness seemed a luxury. I was just the girl on the periphery, a spectator in my own life. Then, just then, he appeared. One moment, all I could see were the kaleidoscope lights, and the next, he emerged from the crowd, Raymond Morgan, the billionaire CEO. His tailored suit gleamed under the glow, like an otherworldly creature descending from the heavens. Everyone whispered in awe. I felt my throat tighten as he approached, but my thoughts raced like a roller coaster. Did I dare to make eye contact? Would he even see me, a mere girl selling popcorn? I forced myself to breathe, my heart pounding like the drums of a wild parade. He paused, and the world around me faded into hushed silence. For a second, he seemed intrigued, his deep-set eyes locking with mine. I was nothing, yet in that moment, I felt seen. I thought about everything that separated us, my hands shook as I reached for the popcorn scoop. Can I help you? My voice trembled, a tiny whisper against the fervent noise that he held out a crisp bill, the type meant for luxury, an illusion of power. I'll take a large one, his voice rang out, both commanding and strangely inviting. The world spun. I felt a spark, an unexpected connection, like it was just the two of us, and all the noise faded into background music. But then, a mother yanked her child away, scowling at the strange man who dared to stand too close to a popcorn girl. The moment shattered. The spell broke as quickly as it formed. His smile faded, uncertainty etched on his handsome face. He turned slightly, glancing at the spectacle, then back to me, intensity still flickering in his eyes. My heart raced, but fear crept in like shadows. Who was I to think this would last? Just as I handed him the large bag, a loud crash rang out, a ride malfunctioning or maybe a fight breaking loose. Gasps filled the air, screams punctured the night. Suddenly, I was in the center of chaos, a crowd moving like a tidal wave, pushing and pulling. I looked up, and he was gone. Only echoes remained, whispers of a million what-ifs swirling around me. Clara. Jane's voice pierced my thoughts. Are you okay? But I didn't answer. I stood there, heart racing, the popcorn cart feeling heavier than it ever had. What had just happened? Did I really think he noticed me? Would that moment ever return? My mind buzzed with questions. Why did I feel that spark? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The next morning, Clara's heart was still heavy with unanswered questions. The carnival felt like a distant dream, fading with the rising sun. She trudged back to her popcorn cart, the sights and sounds of the previous night still echoing, yet, it all felt like a cruel joke. "Jane! Sam!" she called, her voice lacking the usual enthusiasm. The echoes of laughter from the carnival were replaced by the lingering emptiness of her routine. Her friends appeared, buzzing with excitement, but Clara felt a profound disconnect. She had witnessed something magical, but now it sat like a stone in her chest. "Did you see the roller coaster? It was amazing," Jane said, spinning around, her arms flailing like the very rides they enjoyed. "Yeah, amazing," Clara replied flatly, her gaze falling to the pavement. "Come on, Clara. You were right there with Mr. Morgan. You should be full of stories," Sam nudged her. And Clara thought of the moment they had shared, how in that brief second, she was more than just the girl behind the cart. "It wasn't anything," she insisted, desperation creeping into her tone. "Just a strange encounter." Even as the words left her mouth, she felt the weight of them. She was trying to convince herself as much as them. The day dragged on, a blur of customers and popcorn bags. But every time someone approached, she held her breath, half expecting to see Raymond Morgan standing there, with that disarming smile and those piercing eyes. Instead, the faces blurred into the everyday monotony of her world. They were strangers, and she was still just Clara, the popcorn girl. It was just past noon when things took an unexpected turn. As she bundled several bags for a family of excited children, a familiar tall figure appeared at the edge of her vision. Clara's heart raced, and it took a moment for her to believe it. He was back. Raymond stood there, casually observing the carnival chaos, a slight smile on his lips. "Clara, right?" he said, his voice smooth, breaking through the noise of the crowd. Her heart somersaulted at the sound of her name, an ingredient of magic dust. Swallowing hard, she managed to reply, "Yes, sir." His eyes narrowed slightly, studying her. "It's just Raymond. No need for formalities." A twinkle of humor danced in his eyes as he continued, "I don't think I've ever met a popcorn vendor who wouldn't let me call them by their first name." With those words, it seemed the chaotic carnival softened around them. Clara felt the world shift, pulsing with the possibility of something more. "Would you mind if I got some popcorn?" he asked, and she felt once again the heat creeping across her cheeks. "A nostalgic craving I never quite shake." Clara wiped her trembling hands on her apron, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Of course, would you like a large or a small? Let us go big." He grinned, and once again her world felt like it was tilting on its axis. As she scooped the popcorn into the bag, she tried to ignore the fluttering in her stomach, the way his presence made the air around her feel electric. "I didn't think I'd see you again after last night," she managed to say, and as the words tumbled out, the weight of vulnerability lay heavy between them. "I couldn't leave without introducing myself properly," he replied, his voice earnest. "What happened last night? It felt like we were both lost in our own worlds, didn't it?" "Yes, lost." The word echoed through Clara's mind, lingering like a bittersweet taste. Just then, Clara caught a glimpse of something behind him, a shadow that shifted slightly. It was a man in a dark coat, lurking, watching them. An unsettling feeling climbed its way up her spine. "Excuse me," she said, unable to shake the sense of unease that prickled at her. As she leaned to get a better look, Raymond took a step toward her, concern etched in his features. "Everything all right?" he asked, his brow furrowing. His concern sent adrenaline rushing through her. Before she could reply, the shadowy figure suddenly stepped forward, and her heart dropped when a familiar face emerged, her estranged father, the man she had hoped never to see again. Their eyes locked, and she felt the world tilt dangerously. "Clara," he uttered, disbelief mingling with hesitation. "That's enough, leave me alone," she shouted, her heart racing with both anger and fear. Raymond's gaze sharpened, focusing on the guy standing there, and she saw the protective glint in his eyes. "Who is this?" he demanded, his voice low yet firm, cutting through the thick tension that had suddenly enveloped them. Clara stood frozen, caught between a past she longed to escape and a future that suddenly seemed so uncertain. The carnival lights dimmed, and all the laughter faded into a haunting silence. Clara. Her father's voice broke through the air, pleading and unforgiving, just as her world started to fracture anew.
The moment vanished like smoke, but as the door closed behind them, lingering silence enveloped me, giving way to a new, urgent need to understand. Who was he really, and could this unshakable chasm between us ever be crossed?
Clara's breath hitched in her throat as her father's presence loomed menacingly over her. The void she had worked so hard to fill with popcorn, laughter, and fleeting friendships cracked wide open, exposing raw, festering wounds that had begun to scab over in his absence. Her heart raced, pounding like the drums of the carnival, drowning out every other sound except the desperate thrum of her pulse. "Leave me alone," she spat, the anger in her chest igniting like a wildfire, urging her to push him back into the shadows from which he had emerged. She turned to Raymond, her gaze a frantic plea. "Please, don't." Raymond stepped closer, placing himself between Clara and her father, the protective stance of a knight ready to defend his queen. "Is there a problem here?" His voice was calm, but the intensity of his expression suggested something deeper, something that spoke to an instinct to shield. "Stay out of this," her father replied, exasperation lining his features, yet there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes that Clara clung to. It brought her a moment of warped hope as she remembered the warmth of community she found in her popcorn cart, the unbreakable bonds of friendships that had formed around something so simple. What had she given up for this man who only brought her pain? "Clara, this isn't how it should be," her father continued, stepping forward as if hoping to bridge the expansive emotional gulf that hung between them. "I've come to talk." Her father's voice pierced through her defenses, unearthing memories she'd buried under the weight of her dreams. "There's nothing to talk about," she shouted, defiance surging forward to counterbalance the familiar pang of sorrow that twisted in her gut. The moment hung heavy, as if the world had paused, forcing them into a crucible of raw emotion. Clara's pulse quickened not just from fear but the sight of Raymond still standing tall by her side. The carnival, a backdrop of vibrant colors and joyful chaos, felt oppressive under the weight of her father's gaze. "You don't know what I've been through," Clara spat, her voice trailing off in the face of years' worth of hurt. The biting edge of her words belied the vulnerability she struggled to keep at bay. "You left. You chose to leave." Raymond's eyes darted back and forth between them, the unspoken weight of the moment sinking in. "Clara, are you all right?" he finally asked, his voice gentle yet firm as he kept his gaze on her father, sizing him up. The crowd around them began to swirl back into focus, laughter and light-hearted banter slowly seeping back in, as if the universe hesitated, waiting for Clara's next move. "I have to go," she declared, the words escaping her before she could think them through. She edged away from her father, and by some instinct, Raymond moved with her, not letting her slip into the churning tide of fear and heartache alone. "Clara, wait." Her father's voice frayed with panic as he reached for her, but she recoiled, her body on fire. "No. You don't get to say that after all this time," she shouted defiantly, feeling both liberated and shackled by the outburst. The shadow of her past collided with her present, leaving her breathless. "You don't get to dictate this moment." Raymond turned slightly, keeping himself between her and her father. "You need to respect her space," he said, his voice steady as it cut through the cord of conflict. "This isn't the time or place for this." Just as Clara found herself lost in the storm of conflicting emotions, the fear, anger, and the unexpected warmth Raymond offered her father's expression shifted into something far darker.
"I need all the practice I can get. I motivated myself, my voice stronger than I felt. What's the worst that could happen? Okay, I'll call you later with the details," she responded, her eyes glinting with mild surprise. I felt a spark of exhilaration rekindle within me, and for the first time in days, I was moving forward, however uncertainly. That night I stood before my closet, adorned with forlorn dresses I rarely wore. The notion of attending a gala enveloped me in uncertainty as I rifled through the fabric, wishing I could summon the courage to capture that flourishing spirit I sometimes felt. But just as I was about to settle for something simple, the reality of the evening broke through my daydreams. What if Max were there? A sudden knock at my door jolted me from my thoughts. My heart thudded as I opened it to find a large bouquet in the arms of a delivery person. My name scrawled elegantly on the card sent a chill down my spine. From Max, the delivery person said, barely waiting for a tip before hurrying away, leaving me breathless at the weight of hope and apprehension that I reached out for the card, scanning its contents. Can we talk? I need to explain. The world around me faded as exhilaration and dread collided. Would this finally be the moment clarity intertwined with vulnerability, or yet another twist in our tangled fate? My heart raced, as the unanswered questions loomed larger than the stars outside my window. Suddenly, all I could think was, what happens now? The gala loomed ahead like a gathering storm, a mixture of trepidation and excitement swirling within me. Every glance at the shimmering gown hanging in my closet sent waves of anxiety crashing against my resolve. It was just a party, I reminded myself. A chance to step into a world where I felt simultaneously out of place and utterly compelled. I held the card from Max between trembling fingers, the inked promise of a conversation weighing heavily in my heart. Can we talk? Echoed in my mind, igniting a desire to unravel the tangled threads of our fateful connection. However, the uncertainty of his intentions cast a long shadow over my eagerness. What if the conversation he proposed only deepened the chasm I was already tiptoeing around? Each breath was a battle as I prepared for the gala, tugging at the straps of the gown that felt both extravagant and foreign against my skin. One last look in the mirror revealed a stranger reflected back at me, a hopeful figure draped in dreams that clashed violently with the marker of reality. The gala venue was an imposing structure adorned with chandeliers that cascaded light like falling stars. As I slid through the entrance, the laughter and chatter swirled around me, electrifying yet isolating, as if everyone were in tune with a melody I could not hear. Dread mingled with excitement as I took hesitant steps deeper into the crowd, but my thoughts flickered back to the girl at the cafe, the embodiment of innocence and joy. If only I could possess that unfiltered happiness once more, those moments before the weight of reality pressed down on me. "Excuse me," she had said with earnestness that felt alive in my memory. I clung to her spirit for as long as possible, even as I mingled with guests who flaunted their wealth and status like badges. The room brimmed with confidence and ambition that felt foreign to me. At that moment, I was simply an interloper granted passage to a realm where every aspiration thrived. That I noticed a familiar face amidst the crowd, and my heart leapt. But the elation quickly turned to frustration as I recognized it was not Max. It was Michael, my coworker and friend, flaunting his usual charm and charisma. He eyed me with a mixture of surprise and admiration, and for a fleeting moment, I felt buoyed by his presence. "Wow, you clean up nicely," he exclaimed, leaning in to give me a playful nudge. "I knew you had it in you." "Just trying to fit in," I shrugged, forcing a smile as uncertainty loomed large in my chest. As the evening unfolded, I found solace in brief conversations, yet the anticipation of Max's arrival gnawed at me like a restless whisper. I had barely sipped my drink when I caught a glimpse of him through the throng. Dapper in a tailored suit, he moved with an effortless grace that suggested he belonged here far more than I did. The tumult of emotions within me swelled, a crash of hope, fear, and that unmistakable longing. Just as I thought the moment had arrived, he turned his back, lost in conversation with another group. Feeling small and abandoned amongst magnified socialites, I felt my heart begin to withdraw. Maybe it was better this way. Maybe the universe was weaving a thread of separation for a reason. I roamed the perimeter of the room, the soft beat of music serving as a balm to my anxious soul. I noticed a door half ajar, the quiet escape promising respite from the cacophony. On a whim, I slipped through, grateful for a brief reprieve. Once inside, I found myself in a serene waiting area, momentarily unburdened. It was a stark contrast to the vibrant chaos outside, where we were all playing our roles. The decor was elegant yet muted, a place for introspection, and that's when I heard something that made my heart plummet. The muffled voices beyond the door were clear enough to grasp snippets of conversation, one voice unmistakable. "Here's the plan," a deep, authoritative voice declared, crisp and methodical. "Once we secure the partnership, everything falls into place. I need that deal to move forward, no exceptions. Max, are you sure this is the right move?" Another voice questioned, laden with concern. "What about the girl?" I pressed my ear against the door, breath hitching in my throat. The girl? My heart began to race as pieces clicked into place. Was I just a pawn in some strategic game designed to further his ambitions? What about her? Max's tone shifted, revealing a depth of frustration I had never heard before. "I can't let emotions interfere. It's just business, and she is not part of that world. It's safer this way." The words struck me like a blow, each syllable pulling tighter against my chest. The anticipation, the bouquets, the warmth in his gaze, it all seemed falsely adorned, a mirage shimmering just beyond my reach. As I retreated from the door, panic unclenched its grip only to twist into something else entirely: betrayal. I stood there, heart racing, caught between my hope for him and the painful reality of who he might truly be. Through the cracks of revelation splintered my resolve, leaving me trembling in the shadows of the gala. Should I confront him? Should I leave? My mind echoed the sentiment I had whispered to him before meeting him. What happens now? Now, more bewildered than ever, I remained teetering on the brink of understanding, both terrified and helpless in the face of a truth I had never anticipated.
Away, and the imminent confrontation that could spiral her world back into darkness. "Clara?" Raymond's voice trembled with concern as her eyes widened, emotions spiraling out of control. "What is it?" She couldn't find the words, fear rendered her mute, and in that moment, she felt time freeze, her father's chilling gaze a reminder that the battle for her independence, her safety, and her hope had only just begun.
The air felt heavy as I slowly re-entered the gala, my heart still pounding from what I had overheard. The vibrant atmosphere seemed a world apart, the laughter and music dancing mockingly around me, as I desperately tried to process the revelation. The ache in my chest fluttered between hope and despair, leaving me feeling hollow and adrift. Michael caught my eye as I stepped back into the grand room, his expression shifting from friendly to concerned. He approached me, a glimmer of worry etched across his brow. "Hey, are you all right? You look a bit pale." I forced a smile that felt brittle on my lips. "Just needed a moment to breathe," I replied, but the truth was far less simple. "What did you think of the presentation?" He continued, oblivious to the storm swirling in my heart. "Presentation?" My mind dulled for a moment, struggling to reforge the connection between this gala and the internal chaos. Yeah, it was great." Michael, ever the enthusiast, launched into a detailed description of the figures and projections shared earlier, but all I could do was nod along, unable to focus on anything beyond Max's piercing words how I didn't belong in his world, and the cold reality that I had been fooling myself. As Michael rambled, I felt a gentle brush against my arm. I turned to see a woman I hadn't noticed before, a presence so unexpectedly calming in the frenetic environment. Her short, fiery hair framed a warm, open face, lined with kindness. "I couldn't help but overhear," she said softly, as if she sensed the gravity of my emotions. "You seem like you're caught in a whirlwind. Just a lot to take in," I murmured, surprised by her all-knowing gaze, as if she could see beneath my facade. "I get it," she offered, her voice steady. "Gala events can often feel overwhelming, especially when you're navigating personal connections. Sometimes they turn into storm clouds before we even realize it." I felt drawn to her sincerity, a small flicker of hope igniting as I allowed myself to share a fragment of my distress. "I thought I had a connection with someone here, but now I don't even know if it was real. Let me tell you, connections can be complicated, especially in this world," she said with an understanding nod. "People often wear masks to conceal their true selves, but every once in a while, you find a soul who strips those layers away and sees you for who you are." Her words washed over me, a comforting reminder that I wasn't entirely alone in this sea of opulence. "You don't know how much I needed to hear that," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm Clara, by the way." She introduced herself, her smile blooming like a gentle flower amid the chaos of the gala. "Nice to meet you," I replied, feeling a warmth spread through me. Perhaps I could cling to this moment, however fleeting it may be, but then, fate twisted the knife again. Just as a sense of relief began to wash over me, the door swung open nearby. I turned and saw Max stepping into the bright ballroom, his expression hard, eyes scanning the crowd as if searching for someone specific. My heart sank. Instinctively preparing for the tidal wave of emotions I still carried within me, he caught sight of me, the pool of longing that had built inside me morphing fluidly into confusion and despair. I couldn't tell if the spark in his gaze held promise or betrayal, and before I could make sense of it, he began walking toward me, purpose radiating from his every step. "Hey," he said, his tone cool, yet the intensity in his eyes suggested an undercurrent of something deeper. "I've been looking for you." I needed some air, I stammered, my voice wavering. "What were you talking about in there?" Clara had wisely retreated, leaving me to navigate this moment alone. The space between us felt charged, the air thickening with unspoken words as each heartbeat reverberated like thunder in my ears. Max's brow furrowed. He opened his mouth to speak, then hesitated, perhaps weighing the emptiness that echoed between us. "I can explain," he finally said, taking a step closer. "Explain what?" I shot back, a fire of indignation igniting within me as the weight of his earlier words clung to my memory. "That I'm just a distraction? Just a girl who doesn't fit into your plans?" I didn't mean it that way. His voice was sharper than I expected, breaking against my defenses. A flicker of vulnerability flashed in his eyes, but it was overshadowed by the tension thrumming between us. "Everything I do is for what?" I interrupted, the hurt swelling in my voice. "For this partnership? For your career? Again, where do I fit into that? I want more than just business. You need to believe that." His words rushed out like an urgent plea, but I could hear the cracks beginning to show. And just as the possibility of redemption seemed to hover between us, a loud crash reverberated through the hall, followed by a collective gasp. I turned just in time to see a tray full of exquisite champagne glasses tumble across the polished floor, sparkling liquid spilling like regrets into the night. But among the chaos, my eyes locked onto something far more pressing, someone hurriedly pulling away from the scene. A figure cloaked in shadow and urgency, slipping into a side exit as if trying to escape an unseen threat. That a chill crept down my spine. The dinner party's delight suddenly feeling like an elaborate illusion. I turned back to Max, breathless with the revelation that something much bigger was at stake. The question hung heavy in the air, silent yet deafening. What had I unwittingly become a part of? Before I could remark, he seemed to sense my shift in focus and followed my gaze toward the figure disappearing from sight. In that moment of uncertainty, I could feel the edge of the cliff we were about to fall from, the delicate threads of our connection teetering on the brink of disaster.
And the raw reality of her past was about to rip through her present in ways she could never have imagined.
I had spent years curating a life that felt secure, hidden behind the carefully constructed walls of my routine. But that moment, the crash of glasses, the figure fading into the shadows, ripped away the veil of normalcy, exposing the raw nerves beneath. I had a fleeting realization that everything I thought I knew was about to be rewritten. Max's eyes had turned hard, narrowed in concentration as he grasped the enormity of the situation. Fear and confusion began to race through me. The very notion that I was at the center of something more dangerous than emotions shattered my perception. "We should go after them," I urged, my voice trembling. "Wait," Max replied firmly, shaking his head, as he remained rooted to the spot. "It could be dangerous." I felt a fire ignite within me, stoked by equal measures of anger and the overwhelming need to understand. "Dangerous? You can't just trust me. I know what's at stake," he interrupted, his expression unreadable, a storm brewing behind his typically charming facade. "Do you?" I retorted, stepping closer. The air around us crackled with tension, because right now, it feels like I'm standing in the middle of a game I didn't sign up for. I thought we were in this together. Max's frustration flared briefly before it fizzled out. He stepped back, raking a hand through his hair, revealing the strain that lay beneath his polished exterior. "I want you to be safe. This isn't just about us anymore." My heart sank further. The warmth that Clara had ignited moments ago felt extinguished, replaced by the gripping reality of our situation. What does that mean? I pressed, desperate to pierce the layers of secrecy. Look, I can't explain everything right now, but I promise you, if you knew, if you understood the kind of world I'm immersed in, you would want to stay as far away from it as possible. His words were heavy, laced with an urgency that made my veins run cold. Before I could respond, a splash of color caught my eye. A woman in a striking red dress had taken center stage in the ballroom, her voice escalating above the whispers of the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention?" she called, her tone both vibrant and commanding. But I wasn't listening to her. I was still focused on the figure that had slipped away into the shadows, an echo of uncertainty still clinging to the I in the distance. Clara watched from the sidelines, concern etched on her face as she observed Max's increasingly agitated demeanor. Her presence grounded me, reminding me that kindness had flickered into my life when I least expected it. I shot her a hopeful look, willing her to share in this silent plea to act. Max seemed to read my mind, his eyes darting between the spotlight and the doorway. "We can't just leave this. We need to know what is going on." The impulsive nature of the moment felt intoxicating, urging me to unlock doors I hadn't dared to approach before. "Then let us go," I said with determination, every nerve ending alight, yearning for answers as the once gilded gala felt like a facade crumbling around us. Before we could vanish into the commotion, a cacophony of voices erupted again, this time tinged with panic. A bouncer rushed in, face grim, shouting for assistance as he described an incident happening in the hallway. The air turned electric, stirring the depths of my apprehension. "Let us go," Max urged, his voice barely hiding the urgency. The last remnants of our earlier argument dissipated as instinct took over, and we slipped through the crowd, weaving towards the chaos, uncertainty buzzing in the back of my mind. As we pushed through the thrall of guests, conversations fading to murmurs, memories of the laughter and elegance earlier in the evening felt like distant echoes. I could see more suited figures gathering, a perimeter around what had become an impromptu crisis, their worried whispers slicing through the air. "Stay close," Max instructed as we arrived at the fringe. My pulse raced, adrenaline coursing through me. I grasped his hand, drawing strength from the touch, willing him to protect whatever fragile connection we still had. Peering inside the circle, I caught a glimpse of the woman in the red dress, rallying a small team of attendees, her demeanor surprisingly authoritative. But my focus didn't linger. It shifted instinctively back to the hallway, where the shadowed figure had vanished moments prior. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed someone emerging from the shadows, a familiar face, harried and drawn. It was Jacob, Max's estranged business partner, a man I had heard Max mention with both respect and apprehension. He wore a mask of panic that didn't suit his usual calm demeanor. "Max," Jacob called, eyes wide as they landed on us. "You need to come with me. Now." The weight of his urgency sent a shiver through me, heightening the pulse of my heart. Max turned to me, his face a mixture of fear and defiance. "I'll be right back." "Max," I began, the helplessness creeping back, but he was already moving away, leaving me behind in the turbulence stirring around us. He disappeared through the doorway, leaving me ensnared within an atmosphere heavy with unsaid words, uncertainties, and revelations waiting to unravel. And as the gaudy gala shimmered in the backdrop, I couldn't shake the feeling that the very ground beneath my feet was shifting, that nothing would ever be the same again. I turned to Clara, who nodded reassuringly, but my heart screamed with a fresh wave of trepidation. What had started as a promise of love and connection was spiraling into a darkness I never anticipated, and it left me questioning the very fabric of my reality. The chaos of the ballroom faded, replaced by the concrete walls of a stark hallway lit with fluorescent lights. The air felt charged, oppressive, and I struggled to keep my breath steady as I paced in circles, my thoughts racing like the feet of a trapped animal. The laughter and music no longer had any meaning. They were phantoms of a life I had so carefully cultivated, slipping deeper away with every passing moment. Jacob returned, his expression drawn, and I could see the irritation brewing behind his brow. "We need to move," he said sharply, glancing back toward the ballroom. His hands were trembling slightly, making me wonder if he fought against his own fear. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice trembling as I searched his eyes for some glimmer of understanding. "They're getting involved. This isn't something you want to witness." "Max." His voice trailed off, and I caught him glancing again towards the doorway where Max had disappeared. "Where is he?" "He needs to know. Max is dealing with something he didn't want to expose you to. If he had thought it was safe, you would be with him. But right now, I don't know what he is walking into." There was an urgency in Jacob's voice, layered with a hint of desperation that sent my heart racing. "What do you know?" I pressed. "You can't keep me out of this. I care about him." My resolve to remain a part of Max's world sparked a fire within me, igniting the determination that had propelled me forward since this evening began. Jacob's expression softened at my confession. "You don't understand, do you? This world isn't just about care and words. It's built on lies and manipulation. People are not who they appear to be." The air thickened, the weight of his words suffocating as the trembling walls of my security cracked open, exposing my vulnerability. "Then tell me the truth," I demanded, desperation clawing at the seams of my composure. "I need to know. I have to help him." A flicker of indecision crossed Jacob's face. "You think you can help? I admire your spirit, but this isn't a fairy tale." Before I could respond, a distant crash shattered the tense atmosphere, echoing through the hall like a gunshot. My heart raced, and instinct kicked in. "What was that?" I whispered, fear curling through my chest. Jacob's jaw tightened, his eyes scanning the corridor. "That's our cue. We have to either stay hidden or run." But all I could focus on was Max. He had thrust himself into the unknown, and I couldn't simply stand still, worrying about what could happen. "I need to find him." Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed from around the corner. Before Jacob could respond, I turned to flee towards the noise, driven by an unquenchable instinct to reach him. But Jacob's hand clamped down on my wrist, pulling me back with surprising strength. "Don't. You'll just make things worse," he warned, his voice a harsh whisper. "No, I can't just wait here." Panic surged through me, clamoring for control, my heart a drum, beating out the urgency of my mission. I wrenched free from his grip and bolted down the hallway, ignoring his call just as the corridor twisted and opened into a chaotic scene. Before me, the world erupted. A group of suited men stood with tense expressions. Max was among them, his back to me, and I could see the tension pooling in his shoulders. The chaos was palpable, each word exchanged like a dagger, a battle fought in murmurs and glances that danced over the fringes of violence. "Get out of here," one of the men shouted, his voice laced with a sharp edge that sliced through the air. "We don't have time for this." My heart sank at the urgency thrust in that command, instinct drawing me to step forward. But before I could make sense of what I was seeing, Jacob surged past me, his own frame mirroring the tension I felt. He called out to Max, "We need to move now, this is bad." Max pivoted sharply, his eyes widening as they locked onto mine, filled with an emotion I couldn't decipher. "No, get back," he shouted, panic threading through his tone. "Max," I cried, reaching out toward him. But before I could bridge the space between us, a loud crack echoed, sharp and terrifying. I flinched instinctively, and the world around me tilted. The moment stretched like an eternity. In a tumult of noise, everything erupted. Bodies surged, chaos unfurled. I could barely register the collective gasp of startled breaths as the room morphed into a fray of confusion and terror. Then a second loud bang, and in that instant, clarity arrived, revealing a truth I couldn't have prepared for. A figure emerged from the shadows, a gun in hand aimed directly into the chaos. My breath caught in my throat. Time slowed, my heart pounding erratically as I felt the icy grip of fear. My body surged forward, instinct overriding logic, desperate to reach Max and protect him from the torrent of danger surging forth. But before I could react, my heart sinking as realization dawned this moment would forever alter everything. This was the line, where my safety and my connection to Max hung in the balance amid the swirling chaos. Would I reach him in time? In the midst of it all, I felt small, helpless, and above all unprepared for the depths of the darkness into which I was about to plunge. The chaos felt like a cruel labyrinth with no end, each pulse of sound ricocheting through me as I pushed against the tide of panic swelling in that room. It was as if the world had become warped, shadows leaped between the flares of brightness, and I was stuck, caught in a web spun from fear and determination. "Max!" I screamed again, my voice cracking under the weight of my dread. It was a simple invocation, a plea that carried the essence of my heart, a desperate attempt to anchor myself in the stormy seas of uncertainty. Jacob rushed forward, but my gaze was fixated on Max, whose eyes darted between the armed figure and me. His expression morphed from shock to something resolute, perhaps even protective, rooted at the core of his essence. I saw the way his jaw clenched and how his hands shook not from fear, but from the resolve to shield me. And in that moment, despite the chaos, I could sense a flicker of hope, the type that dared to shine in the darkest of times. Suddenly, time seemed to halt. The world narrowed down to just him and me. I saw shadows flush across his face, raw emotions that mirrored a tension I'd never witnessed before. But anger surged within me for letting fear dictate my actions. "Let me help you, Max. Stay back." His voice rose over the tumult, a potent plea ringing with urgency. "Please, you're in danger. Stop." A voice I barely recognized cut through the roiling chaos. It belonged to the figure weaponizing tension and vulnerability with their gun drawn. "What's this? You think you can play hero? You have no idea what you're meddling in." A shine of confidence overshadowed the fear in my heart. "No, you don't know me," I shouted back, fists clenched, adrenaline flooding my veins. "I'm not afraid of you." Jacob maneuvered beside me, his expression one of genuine alarm tinged with admiration. "This isn't how it works," he implored. However, I could feel the brush of something flickering between the tension and undeniable pulse of something genuine that flared against the backdrop of danger. The gunman's snort laughed, a sound thick with disbelief. "Isn't that cute? A hero and a sidekick." He waved the weapon dismissively, making my heart lurch in my chest. "You want to save the day? Fine. Just know that you're signing a death warrant." But as he said those dreadful words, Max inched closer to me, his hand reaching out as if to bridge the distance that had flared between us. "No," he shouted, the agony threading through his voice making the atmosphere heavier still. "Get back, stay safe, please. Run. I can't lose you." In that heartbeat, amidst the sound of chaos, I could almost feel the deep undertow of his fear, the primal instinct to protect what mattered to you the most. I recognized that strength. It paralleled mine, linking us across the fray like a fragile thread of light caught between darkness. "Max," I whispered, the only sound that seemed real in the fury that blossomed around us. He watched me, eyes burning with intensity as he grappled with his conflicting emotions. I saw the man I had grown to care for, a multifaceted soul dressed in complexity, now battered by the weight of choice and danger. It was in this moment that the real battle began, not against the chaos but the war raging within ourselves. Before I could process my own thoughts, I felt Jacob's grasp tighten around my arm, pulling me back as the gunman positioned himself to fire. "We need to go," he urged, desperation lacing his words. But I couldn't move. I was rooted by the gravity of an impossible choice to flee or to stand by the one person whose essence had infested my heart. The sickening sound exploded from the figure's weapon, a piercing shot that vibrated through the room and sent shards of panic rippling through me. The world blinked as chaos flared once more, and for a brief moment, the air held a strange stillness as everyone froze, stunned. Then I saw it. A spray of crimson blooms stretching in a grotesque tableau, a reflection of reality crashing back down around us. My breath caught as I grasped what unfolded before me. "Max!" I screamed, each syllable crashing through the barrier of sound, tearing into the fabric of the moment. He staggered back, a hand pressed against his side where crimson seeped through his shirt in a horrific, vivid bloom. The room erupted into action as men scrambled, tipping the scales of chaos in a frenzy, uncertain of how to respond to this betrayal. I dashed forward, uniting resolve with the chaos around us, the world singed by disbelief. "Max, no!" I cried as I reached him, panic dripping like a relentless rain, turning hope into desperation as I sought to catch him. But just as I grasped his arm, my thoughts became a whirlpool of fear and adrenaline. Would I reach him in time to hold on? to save him. And then, in a moment threaded with darkness, I heard Jacob shout, "Get down!" Something shifted, a new threat lurking in the shadows. Perhaps allies scrambling from the chaos to find us, or enemies determined to twist the knife deeper in the sudden, diabolical dance of destruction. And I realized then that my journey was only beginning in the face of a storm I could have never fathomed. The room pulsated with chaos, shadows twisting into forms that loomed with menace. As I touched Max's arm, a frigid wave washed over me, a visceral instinct warning that time was running thin. The warm crimson continued seeping from his side, each drop a cruel reminder of the precarious line between life and death. "Stay with me, Max. Please." My voice broke, cracking under the weight of unshed tears that threatened to spill. I pressed my palm against his wound, wishing my warmth could somehow seal the damage. The world around us blurred. Gunfire erupted, ricocheting off walls, a cruel symphony underscoring our desperate battle against fate. Max struggled to breathe, his eyes shimmering with an intensity that spoke of a stubborn will to survive. "Mia," he breathed my name, barely a whisper, but it wrapped around me, pulling my heart deeper into the abyss of fear I was teetering on. "I know. Don't you dare say it. You're going to be okay. Just hold on." I could feel Jacob nearby, torn between looking out for us and searching for exits. Yet all I could muster was my focus on Max, the pulse pounding in my ears, echoing our shared heartbeat. Then I felt it, that cool rush of life sinking into the shadows, my grasp faltering as he began to slip. "Max, no? Stay with me, please." I shook him gently, desperation seeping into my voice as I willed him to fight. His expression shifted. A flicker of pain twisted his features into something vulnerable yet fierce. "I want to let you go," he murmured, his words barely above a breath, as if the weight of the world was crushing him. Above us, chaos spun wildly, but a flicker of kindness ignited nearby. A woman appearing from the periphery, her demeanor sharp and composed, knelt beside us. She pulled out a makeshift bandage from her pocket, her movements quick and almost instinctual, as if she had witnessed too many scenes of this nature. "Let me help," she said, voice steady. "You need to apply pressure." I barely nodded, following her lead as she guided my hands, aligning them over the serious wound. I focused on Max, blocking out the pandemonium around us, wanting to convey all the warmth and assurance I could muster into my touch. "Max, I want to leave your side. Hold on for me. Just a little longer," I whispered, desperate to sustain the connection, to bring him back from the precipice looming ahead. Jacob, steely yet palpable in his fears, yelled out his own commands. "We need to find a way out. Now." I sensed the urgency in his voice, but couldn't break away from the vision of Max, whose own struggle mirrored my own inner turmoil. Just when the darkness threatened to swallow us whole, I saw a flicker of movement, a figure hiding in the shadows, slipping away like a phantom. My pulse quickened. Was it an ally or an enemy? Suddenly, a deafening crash erupted outside the room, filling the air with dust and debris. The woman beside us instinctively flinched, eyes betraying a knowing fear. In that moment of distraction, a terrible understanding dawned upon me. We were not the only ones in this unpredictable dance of demise. "Max," I called out again, hoping that my voice could break through the shroud of despair clinging so closely. But as I turned to look at him, I realized his eyes were fluttering, a drowsy haze falling over them. The sight sent shockwaves through me, the surge of raw emotion overwhelming. "No, no, no. Max, fight it," I pleaded, shaking him gently. The thundering atmosphere around us faded as his warmth began to slip away, the rhythmic flicker of his heartbeat faltering beneath my fingers. My heart wrenched, clenching with an unbearable tightness. Jacob gripped my shoulder firmly, grounding me back to reality. "We need to go. Now." But I wasn't listening. My gaze remained on Max, the two of us caught in an intimate battle that seemed to stretch across an eternity. Then, from the back of the room, an ominous voice shattered our moment, dark and commanding. "You should have chosen better friends, sweetheart." I whipped around, dread spilling through me as the gunman stepped into the fragmented light, a dangerous smirk playing on his lips, thick with malice. "You think this is just about him?" he sneered, gesturing to Max. "You're playing a game far beyond your reach. Get away from us." Jacob shouted, but I felt rooted to the spot, the weight of helplessness crashing down on me like a wave. Mia? Max's whisper cut through the din, waking something fierce within me. It ignited a flicker of hope that perhaps all was not lost. But just as quickly as it sparked, the gunman raised his weapon again, aiming right at us. "Time us up, princess." In that moment, dread retreated to the corners of my mind, replaced by the strength of a hard choice. As Jacob pushed me backward and I met Max's gaze for what could be the last time, I understood that our fight had just begun. "Trust me," I whispered to him, knowing full well that I was stepping into a storm without knowing if I could find my way back. But my heart surged with an urgent promise. I would do everything to bring him back, no matter the cost. And then, without having time to breathe, I knew I would have to make my move. I had expected the chaos to consume me, but it was the crushing weight of my emotions that truly threatened to pull me under. I felt like I was drowning, time suspended around me as cries and gunfire ricocheted off the walls. Max lay crumpled against my side, blood pooling on the floor while the world outside continued to scream in terror and confusion. The man with the gun loomed closer, eyes glinting with a twisted satisfaction at the spectacle unfolding before him. I could see Jacob instinctively step in front of us, protective, fierce, and unwavering. But all I could focus on was Max, his eyes heavy-lidded, his breath shaky, the flicker of life within him fading like a dying ember. "Stay with me, Max," I begged again, desperation weaving through my every word. "Please, don't you dare give up." His jaw twitched momentarily, a flicker of awareness sparking in his eyes. "Mia," he whispered, the sound like a fragile thread tethering me to my sanity. The gunman raised his weapon further, and my heart pounded violently in my chest. "It's time to end this little love story," he sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "You should have known your place." But as darkness threatened to consume me, an insatiable spark surged within me. "No." The word escaped my lips like a battle cry, raw and unwavering. Something deep inside ignited, reshaping the fear into an unyielding resolve. I couldn't lose him. I wouldn't. With a swift motion, I scrambled to my feet, unwilling to cower in the shadow of despair. "You know nothing about us," I shouted defiantly, grounding my voice with every ounce of courage I could muster. "This isn't just a game. You've messed with the wrong people." The gunman hesitated, surprise flashing across his features, but the moment of distraction was fleeting. He sneered, pulling the trigger. Time slowed again, the air shimmering with the echo of his tactic. I flung myself forward, instinct guiding me to shield Max's body from the weight of uncertainty and loss, bracing for impact. A shot rang out, but not the one I expected. Instead, a thudding sound erupted behind me, a shout reverberating through the air. I turned, my eyes wide with confusion, only to see Jacob grappling with another figure. "It's time to go," he shouted, forcing the newcomer, an ally, into the fray. The gunman, now rattled, aimed his weapon frantically, but as chaos surged, a struggle ensued between Jacob and the figure one that magnified into a war against the darkness threatening to engulf us. Max stirred beside me, his gaze struggling to focus on the commotion. "Mia," he rasped, movement flickering in his limbs. "You run." "No," I cried, fierce determination fueling my response. "I'm not going anywhere." Jacob struggled with the stranger, fear flickering in his eyes, but a quiet resolve ignited within me. I refused to turn away. I moved closer to Max, squeezing his hand. "You fight for me, and I'll fight for you. We're in this together," I promised fiercely, gritting my teeth as I applied more pressure to the wound, praying for some miracle to keep him anchored to this world. "I'm not losing you." Just as Jacob wrestled the gunman's arm, I felt a rush of blood surge beneath my palm. Whatever was left of me surged forward to become something greater, a wellspring of courage I had never known lay within. Suddenly, the gunman's aim faltered, becoming grotesque panic as it dawned on him that we were no longer mere pawns in his twisted game. "This isn't over," he spat, retreating toward the exit as chaos engulfed the room, bodies tangling, the fight swirling into confusion. But as I looked back, my heart sank. Was it over? Had he really gotten away? "Max," I shouted as my eyes met his, and in that singular moment, clarity washed over us like a cleansing tide. We're going to be okay. You just need to hold on. Please. His breath came shallowly, but something ignited in his gaze, a glimmer of fighting spirit cutting against the onslaught of darkness encroaching on us. I am not leaving you, he rasped, the binding of our souls forging a palpable connection through the tumult. Just as Jacob fought back, I felt the thrum of resolve pour through me. This was more than survival. It was a declaration of everything we had fought for, a testament that love could rise above the shadows, that there lingered an unshakable might within, a force that could bend the world back into place, even amidst the ruins. And as everything devolved around us, I yelled, "We are together," shouting against the roar of chaos, the promise stitched tightly between us, power radiating from the remnants of fear. Together, with every ounce of strength I could find, I pulled Max into my embrace. "I won't let you go. I believe in you." I held him tightly, trusting the words to echo louder than any gunfire or chaos, a vow that nothing could shatter. And just as the shadows ebbed, a swell of warmth enveloped us both, a reminder that pain, uncertainty, fear, none of it defined the passion that ignited between two souls.